Hello and welcome to the middle school math classroom of Katreena Baker and Caitlyn Lowry. We chose to focus on the 7th grade math standards that require students to be able to add, subtract, multiply, and divide rational numbers, like fractions. This unit will take about a week and should be done pretty close to the beginning of the school year. The basic theme is that your classroom is a pizza restaurant. Students will need to know how to double recipes, cut recipes in half, host parties, prepare recipes, being able to do all these very real-world concepts. So for a basic overview of how you should plan to teach this unit in your class, very basics, students will be able to add, subtract, multiply, and divide at the end of this unit. This seems like 4 very easy, very short topics. However, this can also be broken down into a lot of little minor skills that students are going to need to know. They are going to be able to have to create fractions from word problems, know which number should be the numerator, which one should be the denominator, etc. They're going to need to be able to know prime factorization. This way they can learn how to simplify their fractions. So even though it's only 4 basic skills, there's going to be a lot of very, very small, nitpicky work that they will need to know as well. So keep that in mind as you're planning your unit. So cognition is basically a very general act of knowing, or it's a process from gaining knowledge from your perception or from very basic ideas. Very, very basically, people control their own learning. So when people can connect things that they are learning with things that they already know, and they are able to categorize and sort things in a way that makes sense for them, it's really, really easy, or at least it is a lot easier for students to actually be able to learn the material. One recommendation is to recognize that our middle school students are at the early stage of formal operationals. So for them, they are not going to have the same abstract capabilities that a high school classroom doing something very similar would. So it is recommended that you allow them to use manipulatives and tools and visuals and as many different ways of seeing the fractions represented as they need to be able to gain that clarity of, in the future, recognizing 1/2 is 1/2 without having to see you cut a watermelon or cut a pizza. But until students really get there, allow them to start with the manipulatives and kind of baby step their way into this skill. Behaviorism is really easily kind of summed up with the idea that if you can guide somebody's behavior, if you can guide their actions and kind of help reinforce more positive actions, they're going to eventually be able to take it in as learning. So, for example, in math, it's a very process-driven type of learning. So if you can reinforce the behavior of, say, simplifying fractions by rewarding and praising students when they do it properly, you'll really reinforce that this is the method that you want to try. This is kind of how you want to do this, which will then allow them to actually be able to do the math work. So you're kind of guiding their learning and guiding their knowledge skills and knowledge gain by simply rewarding the behavior that's getting them that knowledge. So we suggest getting parents involved. If they're able to show their kids that this really does happen in the real world and provide reinforcement for the behavior of, hey, look, I need some help cutting this ingredient in half. Can you show me what you learned in school? And now they're guiding this behavior and showing that this behavior can happen in the real world. It really will help reinforce what's going on with students and help them think about the math that they're doing a lot more real world as opposed to this kind of fake, illogical mess of numbers. So, very basic idea of constructivist learning is that the environment that you're in kind of requires you to adapt and change in order to suit that environment. We can see this in our everyday interactions. I treat my bank teller a lot differently than I treat a traffic cop. I treat, my husband a lot differently than I would treat my student, right? The environment determines the way that your behavior is going to work. And so teachers really should be working to constantly keep that environment shifting and changing and forcing students to have to adapt to that change. Now, the hard part in this is walking that line between too much change that the student is constantly thrown into chaos and not being able to really find a sense of stability, but also still kind of facilitating enough change that the student has to grow. It is a very hard line to walk, but it is one that is very, very important. Students tend to start school and start their childhood with very reflex based behavior. And once they get older, and now they are starting into our phase where they can get the more abstract thinking, especially, they are more able to control their behavior. And so, helping to train their behavior will help them to be able to learn the material better as well. They learn the behavior that is supposed to go with the particular item. For example, when you're teaching students the algorithm for being able to divide fractions, helping them find the behavior, the keep, change, flip, so to speak, method, teaching them this and showing them the process and getting that behavior ingrained in them will help make the material easier to learn because they are not just learning this theory, they're actually learning the action to go with it. So, Vygotsky really believed that we need to connect